You felt like you were going to die. Why? Because you disobeyed. And the parent makes the cookies. We torment our children, put them in a glass jar and sit them on the table. Tell our child not to eat them. And then they come through the kitchen there, and there they are. Now, if you see your child standing, staring at the jar, the imagination heart is going on, and we got problems. And what they're thinking, if I just take one, maybe if I arrange them in such a way. See, they're doing higher order thinking skills, problem solving. But it doesn't stop with one. You know, that's that commercial. You just can't have one. And you come in the kitchen, and there they are. And now, you know why they're dying? And they're going to die. To them, they feel like they're going to die. Is because they disobeyed. The cookie didn't kill them. See, you're killing them. It's a system that we resent. Why, when God pours out His wrath, is there not going to be repentance? There will not be repentance because we have a culture that says, don't talk to me like that. You're worthless. You're insignificant. I need to find a little box for you and put you away, get you out of culture. Shouldn't have children. Shouldn't be in a position of influence of anybody else. Well, they must themselves be subject to historical and dialectical examination. So everything has to be through the process. Now I'm going to, hopefully I don't hurt your ears here when I play this.
What the revolution has been in curriculum is that we no longer are teaching facts to children. It is almost impossible for us to guess the kinds of facts that they will need. That basically we are still measuring the output of schools by national tests, which measure nothing but factual recall. And the issue for most children, and the issues for the society, is that what has changed in education today is that we no longer see the teaching of facts and information as the primary outcome of education. We use facts, and we use changing facts in a variety of ways to teach them information processing. And the reason for that is that none of us can guess what it is they're going to need in the future.
You know, she said we're using changing facts to teach them process or information processing. So the facts are only appropriate. Whatever is appropriate to do the process, those are the facts that are allowed into the room. This book by Norman O. Brown, one of the two books of the 60s, Life Against Death. The other book was Eros and Civilization by Herbert Marcuse. This just give you some examples of Norman Brown's work. This is an article done by Mike Connor with Metro Santa Cruz back in 2005. He says, I waged my intellectual life in the idea of finding in Freud what was missing in Marx. And so these guys merged Freud and Marx. The hard thing is to follow Freud into that dark underworld which he explored and stay there. What is needed is a synthesis of psychoanalysis, anthropology, and history. Boston College professor Alan Wolfe wrote that reading Brown was like taking drugs, a little like taking drugs. The entry into Freud cannot avoid being a plunge into a strange world and a strange language, a world of sick men, a diagnostic language of formidable technicality. But this strange world is a world we all of us actually live in. It is a shattering experience for anyone seriously committed to the Western traditions. By the way, that's patriarch, that's accountability, higher authority. I'm getting feedback, Karen. Of morality and rationality to take a steadfast, unflinching look at what Freud has to say. To experience Freud is to partake a second time of the forbidden fruit. And this book cannot, without sinning, communicate that experience to the reader. But Brown, and this is Mike Connor stating, but Brown believed that the payoff was worth the price of sin, namely that alienation would be overcome. In other words, when you tell your children they can't do something, they go out and tell somebody else they can't do it, and then that interferes with relationships. So you're the cause of alienation. So if I undo the effect you had on your children, we have removed alienation from the world. And the return of the repressed completed. In other words, your child's repressed because you gave them a thou shalt not, and they can't do what they feel like doing. So we get rid of the fear of God or fear of you, then they're set free. Rendered problems of sin permanently moot. In other words, once I destroy this structure you give your children, sin doesn't exist. Life Against Death established Brown, along with his colleagues and friend Herbert Marcuse and later Charles Reich, as intellectual leaders of the New Left, a Marxist mode of the Freudian analysis. Brown's push to resurrect the human body with all its erotic urges freely expressed resonated with the members of the human potential movement and the undergrads who were influenced in the 60s. They've been in leadership for a long time. I've thought enough about myth and history, facts and fiction, to know that truth cannot be told. There is always another way to tell the story. In other words, there are many paths to God. Well, in his book, he gives us a definition of the dialectic. Pretty heady, but it's simple. By dialectical, I mean an activity of consciousness struggling to circumvent the limitations imposed by the formal logical law of contradiction. Now, this is the kind of reading you have to go through. You have to spend hours decoding this stuff, because they coded it. I mean, you start reading these books, you read just the educational stuff like Bloom's taxonomy, you'll say, I have some dishes to wash. Now, yesterday you didn't want to do the dishes, now you can't wait to do them. I've got some lumber to haul 2 blocks down the street. Any reason to escape from the torment that you're going through having to learn this stuff. And they succeeded. They hid their agenda in this language. Well, what's he saying? Let's start at the bottom. Formal logical law of contradiction. That's the traditional home. It's formal. God is always formal. Abba, Father, you think that's informal? You go into the Holy of Holies and get on your back and kick and scream and holler and say, where's my bike? And see whether you're going to get a bike or not. Nothing gets into the Holy of Holies that is not beaten. Everything is chastened that goes into the Holy of Holies. God is always formal. You do not want your legislator ever to go to an informal meeting with a representative from another nation. When that happens, you lost your representation. You want him always to go there formal. So the formal logical law. Now, you ever took logic? At first, it doesn't make any sense, but after you learn the law, then it makes sense. So that when the parent tells you at first you can't go out, it doesn't make any sense. But when you become a parent yourself, you go, well, that makes all kinds of sense. This is my son. He's 30 years old now. He's saying, Dad, I find myself doing the very same thing you did to me. And then I didn't like it, but now I understand. It's amazing what even Maslow, when he had children, he said, my children got me in conflict with my theory. Who should teach whom? He said, before I've had the children teaching the parents. Now he says, no, the parents need to be teaching the children, but it's too late. He already destroyed his own family. He already destroyed a nation. He destroyed me. I cut my teeth on Abraham Maslow. And it's contradictory. Why? Because you want to go out. And it's limits. It imposes. It's the parent saying you have to do it. There's no forcing law. Somebody can tell you can't do something all day long until the person who's the law maker comes into act. You can disregard the laws all you want. So there's a limiting factor that comes with these laws that limit, that are imposed upon you. It's a struggle to circumvent. It's not to break, because if I break the law in my mind, the law is still in effect. But if I can circumvent, if I can create an environment, a rational process where the law is insignificant, then I'm not held accountable. I took that law class under John Whitehead. He said, all us lawyers are trained in semantics, which makes us all liars. It's how skilled you are in semantics that determines how successful you will be. If your client is losing on principle, talk him out of principle. And so the legal system today isn't to represent you. They are to mediate. How can we work this out between the two of you? Why? Because there are no set laws. Why are you coming in insisting that that property is yours? No, it's community property. Maybe it should be utilized a little better if you learn how to get along with your neighbors and you get together and do a committee and come to a consensus on where you should plant those trees on your property. And so we have to struggle to circumvent. It has to be actively carried out, and you have to be conscious that you are overthrowing the standards. So the theory and practice part of this, that's the English rendition. You get on Google, type theory and practice, you won't live long enough to read all the articles. You'll actually end up on the I did a while past. I tried it recently, couldn't get there, but they evidently removed the article. But one of Bush's top 8